Hi, my name is Preeti, and today we are going to talk about the impact of digitalization in the context of Indian government. With the emergence of various technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR, VR, blockchain, which are impacting all the other sectors like fintech, edutech, health tech, agro tech, and e commerce, etc., in a very positive way, now there is a need of GovTech to become widespread and flourish in Indian economy. GovTech startups basically work at an intersection between technology, government, and citizens. India, which is one of the rapidly growing startup hubs in the world, offers plenty of white space to the new age innovators who are driving significant disruption at scale. India's GovTech startups are rising to the occasion and leveraging cutting edge tools and other emerging technologies to bridge the gap between policies and their effective execution. Besides improving efficiency of government function, they act as a bridge between the government and citizens. Government to citizen communication is a major area of innovation. They are facilitating direct engagement between governments and citizens in one or both directions, from direct to citizen service delivery to feedback and communications platform. There is another emerging sector called Civitech, which can be considered as a synonym of GovTech with a broader spectrum, which includes media, directly involving citizens at large scale in governance. Today, we have one such innovator with us who is transforming the governance in India and empowering citizens by means of his startup called EasyGov. Let me introduce you to Mr. Amit Shukla, who founded EasyGov in 2015 with the vision to become the de facto interface for all government and citizen interactions. EasyGov provides easy and convenient access to schemes and services by the government. It provides service offering to improve efficiency in the delivery of these government welfare schemes and services to citizens. Let's know more about EasyGov from Amit himself. Amit with us, who will let us know more about EasyGov. So, Amit, how will you describe EasyGov and its role in transforming the governance for both citizens and the government, bridging the gap in availing day-to-day services to them?
So EasyGov is a GovTech startup, and it started to bridge the gap. Started with the information gap, and later on the accessibility gap. So if you look carefully at the government to citizen scheme and services domain, citizen primarily struggle with four things. So and those are like, first, what can I get from the government? Second, how can I get from the government? And then it goes into the government zone. How efficiently or effectively government will going to process it? Will I have any visibility about my request in the government? And once I have been declared a beneficiary, then the last one, the fourth one is, right, how this benefit will going to reach to me, right? So for example, if it's a pension, that why will it get credited every month in my account, or if it is a scheme that is linked to the installment like housing scheme, so those benefits will come to my account. So we started to solve these four problems, but the intent was always much larger, to build a platform as a service so that we can transform the government, because welfare sector in general is going through a rough time, not only in India but globally, right? Welfare is a very challenging sector, and we are facing a lot of problem. And the COVID 19 and the pandemic has also kind of exposed the more gaps into the welfare system. So, in any country, not only in India.
How many citizens have been benefited with your support, like with EasyGov support, to receive the welfare benefits up till now? Like,
Yeah, so I think receiving the benefit, as I've told you, there are two part of the EasyGov, empowering people and transforming government. We cannot ensure that they will get the benefit, because that's a second part, transforming the government. And though we work very closely with the government, but we have a limited success in terms of transforming the government backend to make it completely less of bureaucracy. So right now we are working with government of Haryana, government of Bihar, government of Karnataka, right? These are three governments where we are working to transform the backend. But the empowering people part, the good part about that is that because this information is available in the public domain, so I can empower people with their eligibility, and more importantly, the procedure, how to apply for it. Coming directly to your question, right? We have empowered close to 1.5 crore citizens in India till date, right? And right now we have a run rate of roughly close to a lakh people getting empowered every day.
I mean, you tell us that, so like, what was that one big event in your life, or like that one moment when you decided that this is your calling, or you like say that you chose this, I mean, becoming an entrepreneur and putting your foot in this sector, and then choosing a GovTech sector, which is you yourself said that will not like GovTech is difficult to get that successful, like in comparison to other sectors like fintech, edutech, agrotech, and other sectors. They are more successful in terms of like doing it. So why and like how you came to this sector?
Yep, I think this is a great question, right? And uh, GovTech is a difficult one, and especially when you talk about India, it's because of variety of the reasons, right? It's a complex because the stakeholders those are involved, right? It's not like that there are many stakeholders. In fintech also we have many stakeholders, but the control that you have on your stakeholders is very limited. So, for example, you cannot control political parties, you cannot control government, right? You cannot control bureaucrats, right? So the beauty of the sector is that it's so complex that you have nothing in your hand,
And
right? And still,
some changes. I mean, the government can change, the bureaucrats can
yeah,
change.
yeah.
Every day you have to.
So precisely, right? So and that's why I said when you say government, right? So if you want to transform something that is there in existence for 100 years, right? I'm talking about globe as well. And if your tenure of the government is 5 years, it the whole transformation cannot fit into the 5 years. And the problem is, right, once the government is formed, right, initial 1 year goes into kind of stabilizing, understanding the bureaucracy, aligning it, right, uh, basically making the ecosystem ready so that it performs in a certain way. And the last 1 year goes into the election mode, right, where you start preparing for the next upcoming election, right? So you want to do something that can give immediate benefit, right? So you don't look for a long term benefit. So the last 1 year is like, if it can't be done in the next 6 months, right, it has a limited value for a political party. So effectively, you are left with only a year, only 3 years of a productive time on which you can do transformation in country like India. The problem that is 70-year-old cannot be solved in 3 years, right? So, and that's why I said, right, there are many things in GovTech, those are not in your control,
Yeah.
and you have to just live with them. And this is one of the reason why investors are also not, right, excited about the GovTech sector, like civic tech. So the entrepreneur has a another difficulty, that because the ecosystem is a complex, people don't understand this. People think that the change, driving change in this vertical is very difficult. You also do not get the funding support. So only money that you have to rely is on grant, right, or someone who is a more of a philanthropist kind of organization, or some donor agencies. Those are the kind of money typically you will get. Or if you are lucky, right, like in case EasyGov was, right, you may get a some player who thinks long term, right, who plans for a really a long term vision, and then you get a support from those players to transform the GovTech. What drove me to try this out? I think that was your the another question in this line. So I worked as a government consultant for more than a decade before starting EasyGov. So I worked in Government of India with 7 state governments, 4 ministries, doing even as complex project as national intelligence grid. And the objective was to safeguard India from another terrorist attack like 2611 in Mumbai. So how to use IT to prevent a terrorist attack. So I worked directly with the government on that project, strategic project for a couple of years. And then I moved outside India. I worked in Australia, US, Japan, and Middle East. When our honorable Prime Minister came to the power in the last tenure, and he called the individual, right, each and every people who can contribute to the growth of this country to rebuild India, right? So imagine a new India, right? So you know all those movement, right? New India, digital India, right? So I got super excited about that, and I came to India and I thought, let's help our honorable Prime Minister transforming at least the GovTech, and that was the genesis. I left my corporate job and started this startup.
Yeah, with that, that's my next question. That like, as we are moving towards fourth generation, where digitalization is playing a big role, how do you see this transforming the GovTech and bringing all welfare schemes at the doorsteps across pan India, like doorsteps of schemes across pan India? What is your vision? Like, because this government is quite pro to digitalization, and like all the sectors and all the government agencies are becoming digitalized now. So, what is your vision?
Yeah. So my vision, right, I will simply put into three lines. So, and this is my vision for the welfare. The first one is from program centric to family centric.
Mhm.
Right now, your welfare is divided into a program, right? So whether Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, right? So you have schemes and schemes, right? And if you put things into number, typically a state has 600 to 700 welfare scheme. And for a citizen to navigate the jungle of 600, 700 is very difficult. The other, the complex part about this scheme is, if you have a 700 schemes, then you divide your budget also in 700 schemes. And every scheme will have administrative cost, marketing cost, PR cost. It's very human, right? For even for a politician or a bureaucrat, they can't focus on 700 schemes. So at any point in time, there would be 20 25 schemes. Those are the flagship schemes. And that's why I say that welfare program has done more damage to the country, right? Than kind of they create dependence among the people. People become dependent on the welfare, right? They divide the budget, they divide the focus, right? And they put government as a not as a single unit, but government as a unit having hundreds of department, and every department having right, 10 and 20s of the scheme. So it doesn't give the holistic view of the government initiative as well. So the first philosophy is we have to move the welfare from program centric to family centric. If you put a family, right, what family need? Four thing: housing, food, education, health. To fulfill this, if they do not have occupational support to fulfill this, then government has to provide this. If they have an occupation to fulfill this, then government should help to take their occupation to the next level, so then they can upgrade the standard of these four things. Okay, so what basically our honorable prime minister is saying right now, Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? So that is all about that, provide the occupation support so that people fulfill their need by their own. They don't rely on government food subsidy. They don't rely on government health system. But at the same time, right, these four things, if someone has a no occupation, or occupation that is that doesn't have enough money to fulfill these four things, then government has to do this fulfillment. Okay. The second part is from dependence to progression. And I've already covered this answer in the first part. Move people away from the welfare. No country can survive putting more and more people on the welfare, right? And it doesn't, that is not.
You're making the citizens dependent on these welfare schemes, and then there is a chaos. There are a lot of them, as you told, that there are lots and lots of welfare schemes, and everybody's like, even not aware of those things and what their eligibility and things like that.
Right, right. So, so we have to make welfare progressive so that we start moving people away from the welfare, not kind of attracting them towards the welfare, and then only you can take the whole population and the whole economy upwards, right? And the last one is, I think, a simple one. Everyone is accepting that as a the new rule of the game, and that is while you are playing with the data, you have a loads of data of the citizen to understand the family and everything. But the privacy is the utmost important. The data should be owned by the family and the citizens only, not by the government. Yeah.
So we already talked about it a little bit, but I want you to explain it in a little bit more detail. That uh, what is the response of these government agencies? How open they are for digitalized governance, or I should say, like how easy or difficult GovTech space is in India in comparison to other sectors? You already answered it, but like why GovTech is not as successful in India as it should be, given the need of it. Like it's like definitely it's like need of the hour.
Yeah, it's a need of the hour, and the good news is people understand this now, right? So we have at least advanced from denial mode to right the acceptance mode, right? Now the more problem is when and how this will going to happen. But I think we have already won the bigger battle, where people are no more in a denial mode that using technology in the government, right, and transforming the government using technology. So we have crossed that hurdle, right? So I think I'm hopeful. As I've told you, the complexity was more from a very powerful stakeholder, right? Like politicians, bureaucrat. The all are very powerful stakeholder into the system, and changing them, it's a long-term process, and we have to live with that, right? So it won't happen, not even overnight. It won't happen in a year or 2 years. It's a journey that will take a decade.
What are the challenges that you're facing due to this COVID-19 pandemic, and like how you're facing, how you're dealing with those challenges? And in your view, how well we would have dealt with this situation if we would have more, digitalized governance, like GovTech was a more has had more presence across India.
We have already seen in India the benefit of digitalization. So Pradhan Mantri Galib Kalyan Yojana with the budget of 2 lakh crore was actually not a new scheme. It was basically benefiting the people who are enrolled in DBT scheme. So whether it's an RGS, whether it's a Ujjala scheme, right? Whether it's a pensions, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana. So these beneficiaries were there in the database, and they were receiving the cash into their account through DBT. So what all we did in the name of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana is basically to selected all these schemes, those have only DBT as a mode to deliver the benefit, and the money is already going into the account. We just pushed more money into those account, right? So, and then that's why I'm saying Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana is not a scheme. If you carefully analyze that scheme, it's basically a superset of 6 7 DBT schemes. Okay, so but as I said, right, and this is what the power of technology is, and this is the way that technology can help in pandemics like COVID-19. But at the same time, though it was a great move, but uh, because we couldn't solve the three problem using technology, that was discovering the beneficiaries, application part, and processing them to make the eligible person to receive the benefit, right? So 2 lakh crore will only go to the people who are receiving some kind of a benefit earlier. It will not go to the people, right, who are not receiving the benefit, and the whole process of getting into the benefit cycle is a complex. So if you take the example of construction worker, we do not have a one database of a construction worker. The board of construction worker is not a very efficient organization, and that's why the enrollment rate is very poor. So construction worker who moved from cities, from metros to their villages and hometown, right, and there we know their situation, right, was I think this could have been for sure better,
Yeah,
and we couldn't do that because uh,
came out as the biggest challenge in this situation, like handling those construction workers and helping them. Like everybody has to come out, and still, like a lot of them suffered and still suffering. So, it do you think
yeah,
we have
and this
to?
could have been done right. This could have been done in a better way if we would have solved other three problems: the discovery. And when I said discovery, it is not only the eligibility check. That's the starting point. But uh, when you have to,
Already, you already have the data of beneficiaries. Then you can do the eligibility check. But first, you have to make the thing. get that.
Correct. First, you have to understand your families, and this will not happen during the pandemic. You have to do it beforehand. Then only you can execute at the time of pandemic. And I take the same example. What if you did not have the database of the beneficiaries? Then Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana would have not have been possible. So similarly, right, to identify the right family, right individual, and do a very targeted welfare, it's like that you prepare for a war. You can't prepare your army during the war, right?
Exactly.
So I think all said done, right? I think we are embarrassing the technology now. So I'm hopeful that we will be using technology in all these segment very soon.
Yeah.
Government is showing good interest. Government is progressive, so that shouldn't be a.
So now, like, let's come to you. I would like to know that what has been your journey like from being a corporate soldier to becoming, like, founding EasyGov and running it so successfully. And also, like, I would like you to tell that story which you told me earlier to our audiences also about like that you struggled before entering corporate world. You explored this entrepreneurial venture like before, even like when you finished your studies, you entered it, and then you experienced it for 10 months, and then due to some reasons you just decided to enter corporate world. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I was lucky to find my passion very early in my life.
Mhm.
So when I was doing my MBA during my summer training, where people were interning with the corporate and making the marketing strategies, I was interning in e-governance in a district called Sitapur in Uttar Pradesh, right, where there was not even a railway station with the broad gauge. So it's a narrow line connected city still, right? And the forget about the computer literacy. The literacy itself was very poor in that district. But we had one amazing guy, right? The district magistrate of Sitapur, Mr. Amod Kumar, and he was my the uh, the client, the internship client, you may say, right, where I was interning with Oracle HPE Governance Center of Excellence under the guidance of Dr. Jatin Bhattacharya, who is a renowned name in the GovTech space in India.
He
He
was
asked me to do something.
he was your contact point there.
Yeah. So, and that's another story, but I think some other time, right? So, how did I landed up to Dr. Jaydeep Bhattacharya? But when Dr. Jaydeep Bhattacharya asked me to go to Sitapur, I was super excited. I went ahead and worked with Amod Kumar sir. And 2 months of summer training, working in the collectorate, understanding right about e-governance was eye-opening for me. And I thought that uh, probably right this sector need more than just the bureaucrat to completely change it, right? And I think to drive the change, the effort should come from both inside and outside. So I had a two option: either join bureaucracy, right, work for it, or be outside and see, right, how can I influence this thing. So obviously there is no dearth of passionate bureaucrats in the country, and they are trying their best, right, to reform the governance. And so I thought that let me try other way around. Let me try another method, right? Because there anyways many people are trying, right, and they have some success. So let me try out a different way, where I do not have a restriction and the control of the government in my thought process, and more important, I am not dependent in terms of decision making on the complete the bureaucratic process.
Actually, with
And
bureaucracy, the decision making is not that independent. That's the challenge.
correct.
Everyone
So it's very difficult to drive your own vision, right? So
I agree.
if you are a politician, then it is okay. But for a bureaucrat to drive his own vision is a challenging task. Let me very frank and honest.
As of now.
Yeah. So yeah. So after that, I was made up my I was able to made up my mind that I will do or die with this sector. I will not change this sector after my summer training itself. Okay, and then I obviously I couldn't get a job in the corporate for this sector, because in 2006 this sector itself was very nascent. There was no GovTech, right? GovTech, Civic Tech, all these terms have happened in last 4 or 5 years. Uh,
Us don't know about it. Very new for most of us still.
Right, right. So at that time, e-governance. So e-governance was shaping up in very small phases at the district level with the district level initiative at MEX. So I thought that I will do it, but there was nothing available. So again, with the guidance of Dr. Jajit Bhattacharya, I was able to start a venture along with another gentleman, right? And we struggled a lot, and but we also had a good success, so it was not going that bad. But yeah, I think 3 4 reasons I would say. First, I think I was also very mature that time, right? Uh, to understand the complexity of this system, and thinking that it can be driven more from a bottom up kind of approach. The second is, there was no startup kind of environment in 2006, right? So like you're getting funding, right? And all this happened in last 7 8 years, right? Or at next 10 years, right? So there was nothing called a startup. It was like if you really have to be profitable from day one, right? If you want to run your venture, and knowing the nuances of the government, getting the payments from the government, right? Winning a contract from the government is all for a new venture is very difficult, right? I think I would say, yeah. Third, I think, but at the same time, right, I will keep the challenges limited in the interest of time. But I think it was a great journey because I traveled. I lived in East Niman district in Madhya Pradesh. I lived in Vishakhapatnam under the teen shed. Right, I lived there for 3 years, uh, and my meal used to cost me 12 rupees that time, because that's the money I had, right? And if you talking about the district, right, so I lived in a Khandwa district in Madhya Pradesh. Is like it's a very backward district. There's no resources infra. So but it was great learning, right? So traveling to the district level and the panchayat level in like Vishakhapatnam, Khandwa, Rohtak, Sitapur, right? It was a lovely journey. A lot of struggle.
Yeah, like you had the taste of rural India at that time.
Yeah, yeah, true taste. And you won't believe, right? So I have to set up a CSC at Khandwa. So I bought 2 computers from Daryaganj, right? And then the old one, the CRT TV with the big CPU and UPS. And so if you pack the old computer into the boxes, you will usually have 4 boxes. So if you are carrying 2 computers, you will have 8 boxes, right? 2 CPU, 2 monitor. So with the 8 boxes in sleeper class of the train from Delhi to Khandwa, right? Without even thinking of getting a coolie to manage those boxes and taking it to the district collectorate and setting up my own CSC in the district collectorate with those two computers and starting delivering the government to citizen schemes and services. I think that was I couldn't do it beyond a year, but I think that was a great learning, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then obviously, right, because it was not was able to provide that kind of an impact. So I thought that, and as I've told you, there was no startup ecosystem, so there was not much of encouragement and support from the family and the society as well. So I decided, okay, let's go to the corporate, right? And then I think corporate journey was a straightforward. It started with Pro Consulting to KPMG to Accenture Management Consulting, where with the Accenture I had a longest stint of just a bit over 5 years, and then yeah, went back to the startup again.
Then you went to abroad and like had a great relation experience there as well.
Yeah, with the Accenture, majority of the time I did the foreign assignments. So I think this is also evaluation. First, I thought that if someone has to do something in the e-governance, they have to work with the company that has a focus, government as a vertical. So Accenture luckily has that vertical, had that vertical that time, public services, health and public services. And then another misconception was probably that it's the Indian government that is slow, right? Indian government that doesn't work. So let's have a taste of the government outside as well and see, right, how aggressive and how progressive they are. So yeah, it was all part of kind of a exploration.
I'm saying you had the enlightenment like experiencing the broad government work styles and everything.
Correct, correct. So it was very important to understand to put things in perspective, right? So people say that what are the best practices? So Singapore, Japan, Australia, even for that matter, Germany, they have one of the best human services system, right? But at the same time, what are the challenges they are facing? Is Japan happy with their welfare system? Or for that matter, is Australia happy with their welfare system? Or is Germany bleeding to support their welfare spend? If these countries still are facing those challenges, right? And so let me tell you also a very interesting thing, and that is from more from a developed world, not from a developing world like India. When your economy goes flat and the world goes for extreme automation, people lose employment and government lose taxes money. The source of welfare is tax. So if your economy is flat, you have less money to do welfare. But because your economy is flat, people are not getting employed, they need more welfare. And this is what we call, right, double fixed problem of the welfare. People need it more when you have a less to do it. So pandemic, COVID-19, the business has stopped in the globe. Government is not getting taxes. And the welfare is get funded by the taxes.
Exactly.
What to do now? People need more welfare, you have a less money to do welfare. And that's why I say it's not a, you can't run this, you can't fight this war, right? When you are into the war, you need to prepare this much better. And the developed countries also fail to do that. So it's not only the success that we need to learn, we need to learn the mistakes that they have done. So that at least in India right now, our economy is growing with the steady rate. We can do more and more welfare year on year. But let's not get into that trap so that you also lead to the situation, right, where people are demanding more welfare and your ability to deliver welfare is getting reduced.
So, Amit, what were the biggest challenges you faced, especially during public-private partnership and breaking the red tape on all fronts?
Red tapeism, you may call it my nature, or probably I am lucky on that front. I have not faced at least someone asking for a monetary favor to me, right? Or I am obviously, right, I am not kind of a person who's going to offer that as well. So you can say, right, I didn't face anything from that point of view. But yeah, the if you say red tapeism in terms of delays in the processes, that is fairly sure is there with the government, and I have faced a lot. Right? It's very difficult to drive with the pace that you want to, right? And people are so much strongly opinionated, and uh, and so much process oriented, and it's not negative, right? Both the terms are right terms. Being a strongly opinionated because you are a government, and at the same time, right, following the process so that you, because it's not your own money, like it's not the venture that I'm running and it's Amit Shukla's money, right? It's a public money that you are using, so you have to be extra cautious. So I would say by the design of the government has to work slow, right? You can't expect government to be corporate and very fast. But to get that kind of a wisdom, it takes time. Till the time you are super frustrated that why are things not moving at the pace, right? Why there is slowness. So all those things I have gone through that. Right now, kind of I have come to the terms of the game. So now I know that this is the turf, this is the pitch, this is the conditions. Now you have to play with these conditions. Don't try to change the pitch, right? The match is on. You can't go and change the pitch now.
You're working with all your patients.
Say that.
So, and what are the major takeaways like from your experience up till now? And or like I can say that what will you suggest like all the new budding entrepreneurs of today who are just starting their journey? So what would you like to advice you will give to them?
Yeah. So my simple advice, right? Who wants to start something? is I call it a 3P principle, and I call it problem, passion, and perseverance. If you have these 3Ps, then only you should venture into a startup, right? The problem has to be a genuine problem. It's not be a problem that can be easily solvable, right? Otherwise, the world would not have been waiting for you to solve this problem, right? The world population is 7 billion, and if you have some idea, it has definitely not your unique idea. Many people have that had idea,
I think
right? So
idea is unique. Today, nothing is unique. You just have to make it unique in your own ways.
correct. Right. It's all so startup is all about execution. It was never about the idea, right? It was always about the execution. So if you have a right problem to be solved, then you have to, the second part, how passionate you are to solve that problem.
You should feel
Is
about
this a problem that you have picked because you want to become an entrepreneur, right? Or this is a problem that actually doesn't allow you to sleep,
you feel for that.
right? Yeah. So, and I always say passion is not something that keeps you going. Passion is something when you don't have any answer, you have failed 10 times, right? And you are at the junction where you think that there is a block from all the side. There is no way out, and I think you have messed up completely your professional and personal life, and you are going nowhere from here. To sustain that position and still working to solve that problem is passion,
It's passion.
right? Passion doesn't allow you to fail. Only thing it does to you that is sustain you at the time of failure. It doesn't do anything in the success, right?
You,
It only help you to pass the failure.
you might slow down, but you will never stop.
Yeah. So because passion is like not the, this is the purpose of your life. If you stop, there is no point of you living, right? And your life also along with that. Uh, uh, so that close bonding should be that passionate you should be. It's not like that you are passionate because you like this actor, right? So passionate is because now it's a matter of a life and death for you, right? Either you'll live with that problem or you'll die with that problem. Okay, so yeah, that's and the last thing is right what I said, the perseverance. So yeah, perseverance. I think it's the trick of the game because innovation is not only in your idea. Innovation is not only in taking it to the MVP. Innovation is in the each and everything that you do, right? So everything that you do, right? So you have to have a perseverance of like. So what we say, the good entrepreneur is who has a microscopic view and also a 10,000 feet view, right? If you are somewhere in between, it's very difficult. So at same point in time, if you can maintain both the views, a microscopic view and 10,000 view, then only you will be able to crack it. Yeah. So that's my kind of advice to the entrepreneurs.
So, what was the role of your family when you decided to, leave the corporate world and enter into this entrepreneurial venture when you already have a, set a family and you were like abroad? So, what was the reaction and how, like, their support, kept you going?
So I will keep this answer very short in one line, in fact.
Okay.
My wife is a co-founder and a director in EasyGo.
Yeah. Yes, yes, I know that.
Yeah, so it was challenging for both of us,
Exactly.
right? But I think, uh,
You don't want to
yeah,
do
and
that, especially
yeah,
the other partner may not be that supportive sometimes, like in few cases.
so I was lucky on that front. So yeah, I was lucky on that front because uh, so she was not passionate about the sector per se, but she was passionate about kind of our personal life, right? and she understand that if people are not allowed, including my children, to pursue their passions, there won't be happiness in the family. So she had that kind of a wisdom, right? So that helped us to, without getting into, so only discussion we had, we never had a discussion whether to do entrepreneurship or not. It was always about, right, how we'll manage the expenses if we'll not get the money, right? This is the fees amount, right? Can we survive? What is our minimum survival cost, right? So and what happened, right, if all fails, then what is our fallback kind of a thing, not from a professional point of view but just from a family point of view. Do we have a house where we can go and just kind of hang around for a few months? Someone will give us food, right? So that was
Those are the
things
basic
that we did.
that come.
Yeah. So it was not like challenging to convince on entrepreneurship or convince on ideas. So those were things very straightforward. And in fact, initial first year, right, I was also working with the Accenture. So she only drove the whole business in the year one of EasyGo.
Really? I mean, that's good to know. I mean, very inspiring of her.
Thank you.
So now, like now you're busy and you're working. So how do you maintain your work-life balance and devote time to, work, family, kids, and like most importantly, yourself? Like, how do you do that? And what is your daily routine?
Okay, so this may be a bit disheartening for people, but there is no work-life balance kind of a concept, right? So if you are passionate, right, and you want to do something, uh, it's very difficult. It's nearly impossible, right? So yeah. So but what you have to do, whatever time you have, uh, maximize it to the fullest, right? And so try to spend that time, and usually because you're into that kind of a thought process, it's very difficult to break in between. So it's always good to take break, right, once or twice in a year, and just relax with family, give them the full time, because switching off on and off during the work is very difficult, because basically you're into that zone, right? You are into that kind of a roller coaster kind of a ride, right? So if you're in a roller coaster, you hardly get a time to think that how is your family, right? So and actually you are on a 24/7 roller coaster ride, right? So that time you're only concerned about that, okay, your heart is thumping, right, and you are into that black tunnel of roller coaster, and it's kind of revolving like this, right? You don't have a time actually to think a lot.
When you're
Okay, so
organization, any other organization, then also like it becomes very difficult to maintain it sometimes. Even though
correct.
you can, but like in your own venture, you do not have that liberty.
Yeah, and the founders out there, right, or the budding founders out there, till the time you will not establish like 4 to 5 years, you will not even get this 1 or 2 times in a year. You will not get at this time once in a year as well. So you will not even realize that how 3 4 years will just pass away, and you will realize that how much distance you have created with your family, right? So one way is you can't involve your children into the startup, but involve, get your wife support, at least, so that, right, you have something common to talk and share, right? So at least the conversation will keep on going, right? Yeah, so that's what it is. But at the same time, right, as an the CEO of my company, I completely appreciate work-life balance. So I never ask the same thing from my employees. I say that, boss, it's your choice. You should be clear about your choice that you have made. If you want to maintain good work-life balance, then don't think that you will be a star employee, right? And you should do what makes you happy. If let's say writing poetry makes me happy, right, then you should focus and you should have a passion to pursue your poetry and at least publish one book in 6 months or a year. For that, if you're compromising on your work, that is okay, that's perfectly fine, right? But putting yourself into the confusing state that I will pursue my poetry and at the same time I will be the rock star in the work, right, that is not possible. Right now you come to the terms of your own condition, that you are working to earn salaries to for the survival of your family. That is not your passion, right? So people, so I don't ask my employee to kind of work over a weekend or overnight, like, right? So I say that just to be clear in your head, right? What do you want to do? If civic tech, golf tech is your focus, then you have to devote your life. If it is an employment, then find something that motivates you. What is very important for a person in the life to be motivated, to be energetic, right? There is no point of having a person who is coming to the office with these sad faces, right? So and I don't like that, right? So I say that do whatever makes you happy in your life.
Even I strongly feel about that. You should always have your creative passions. So now you've already mentioned about your poems. So let's talk about your creative side. So what are your creative passions?
Yeah. So other than golf tech,
Yeah,
I think if I get time from golf tech,
that is also a creative passion, obviously.
if I get some time from a golf tech, I'm a poet. So I write poetry in Hindi. And I used to write a lot during my early days of life. So I started writing when I was in class 7th.
Oh,
And from there, I wrote till I was in graduation
yeah.
in my BTech days. And then I think I fall in love with golf tech, and that passion some way got the hobby, you may say, that got kind of a sideline. But luckily, right from last 1 year, I started writing it again. So yeah, so I love philosophy, and I do not call it philosophy because I'm not a strong believer of Western philosophy. I'm a more believer of Darshan Shastra, right? The way the Indian Darshan Shastra answers all the questions about the life, about the universe, about the world, right? All the questions that troubles us, right? About the family, right? About so yeah, so it's very interesting, right, to read all those things. So I read Gita at least 7 8 times till now, and my thoughts are very much inspired by Gita, right? And what I realized, right, that even before reading Gita, I think my poetries were already very some way inclined towards that kind of a thought process. So in class ninth, I wrote a poetry called Mrityu, death, right? So when I wrote about Mrityu, right, what is death is, right, and what should we do? So so I later on I found that there is a connection. So I started writing it again, right, and so that's a good news. So
Maybe that came from the values incorporated from your parents or grandparents somehow, which it keeps in the
yes,
mind and we remember.
yes. So yeah, so my family is a very mythological family. So my mother, my grandfather, right? They all worship a lot. So we have a house where 2 times puja is must, right? So yeah, so it comes from that background. Definitely, that so your foundation, your belief system is your family has a the greatest role to build your character.
Character, personality, everything. Right? Definitely.
Yeah,
In an direct way or indirect way, it shapes you.
right.
So, what kind of a parent are you? I mean, you're liberal or like strict, or some people call it like you. Some parents are helicopter parents. Like, what kind of a parent are you? Just for my knowledge.
Yeah, so I'm a parent who is dependent on my wife for parenting. So that's the honest answer. Yeah. So apart from that, right, I am a more uh, kind of a parent. Kids will like me only in my happy mode, right? So if I'm kind of playing with them, they are happy because I'm funny at time, right? While I'm on a pool or I'm playing with them, but I spend some time now. I've started spending some time, especially with my son, to talk about some concepts. And when I say concepts, it's not about the academic concepts, but like concepts of life, concept of happiness, concept of, let's say, right, in if you talk about mathematics, right? So like the questions like why minus into minus is plus, right? Have you ever thought of that? Right? So very basic and fundamental, right? But just making him to think, uh, right, more deeper, right? And kind of so only thing that I want to inculcate him is uh, a mind that is very rational, right? And that try to find the reasons behind whatever happening, not only in the science world but also in the life.
And when you look back at your time, when you revisit your time, what are the things? I mean, is there anything which you think you could have done?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think one of the things that I could have done better is so when people were advising me initially, the other entrepreneurs, and talking about the concept like you should have, you should follow only one thing. So even if you're a GovTech space, you're starting, you should start with the very small, right? So the concept is called deep and narrow, right? So do one thing and it should be so simple that you can explain it in one line that you are what you are trying to do.
Mhm.
I somehow, right, some reason I was not able to come to the terms of that, and so I wasted quite of money and the time, right, by struggling to to understand this concept and the power of the concept of deep and narrow. Now I can tell my future entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs that one thing that you have to decide as early as you start is that is deep and narrow. Google started with only search, right? Only search, nothing else. There was no Google Map, there was no Gmail, right? There was no Google Calendar, nothing of that sort. It was just a search. You put in keywords and I will show you the result. I can explain it in one line. When Flipkart started, right? Flipkart started with by selling just books. If they have an e-commerce portal, why can't they sell soap along with the books? But they sold only books, right? So people have to understand the power, right? People think that if I have a technology, why can't I do these two things? No, it's not a technology thing. You and the real problem is basically when you go really deep. And for that, if you have too many things to go into deep, you will never be able to go to the deep because you have a limited time. So that is something, one thing I will definitely advise people, right? Don't try to break your head into to solve the whole problem in one go. Start with as small as you can, solve it, master it, at least have 10% of the market share, right? And then only go into the next one.
So that's another wisdom. Like decide on one thing and put all your focus in that to
Correct.
start with. Okay. So,
Correct.
sir, my questions are over. Thanks, Amit, for spending so much time with us and for giving your, sharing your experience of your journey with all the other people so that they can, take good things from that and, put that in their journey and, take the benefit out of it. Thank you so much. And we wish all the success to EasyGolf in coming years.
Thank you.
And we would like to see like EasyGolf to be on the top in the golf tech sector.
Thanks, Preeti. I think I thoroughly enjoyed this session, and you really asked some very interesting question, and that helped also me to rethink and relive some of the moments in my life.
Mhm.
So thanks for this opportunity. I think I will be more than happy, right, if this reaches to the people, and if this can drive even one or two entrepreneur to decide and follow their passion and do something good for the country, society at large. That will be great. Thank you. Thank
And
you once again for this.
not even entrepreneurship, like in life also, we can apply these things and achieve our goals. Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
So
And
that
apart
will be
from that, you also made us aware about golf tech sector and For all those who are not aware of this, now I think after watching this, they can learn about this sector and get to know about this new thing.
Definitely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great.